Can landlords charge tenants for all rental utilities? Have you ever wondered if landlords can charge tenants for all rental utilities? This question is important for both landlords and tenants to understand. The answer is not as straightforward as you might think. Landlords can charge tenants for utilities, but it heavily relies on what is stated in the written lease agreement and the local laws. The lease must clearly outline which utilities the tenants are responsible for paying. If the lease does not specify this, landlords generally cannot impose utility charges on tenants by default. When utilities are metered individually for each rental unit, tenants usually pay the utility company directly. This means that if you have your own meter, you will handle your own utility bills. However, if the utilities are supplied through a master meter that serves multiple units, landlords typically pay the utility bills and then charge tenants for their share. In these cases, landlords must allocate utility costs fairly. This could be based on factors like the size of the unit, the number of occupants, or a reasonable formula that is clearly outlined in the lease. It is also important to note that landlords cannot charge tenants more than the actual utility costs incurred. The charges must reflect the landlord's actual expenses without any markup or additional fees. To keep things transparent, landlords should provide tenants with copies of utility bills or a clear written statement of total utility costs to justify the charges. Additionally, utilities used in common areas, such as hallways or elevators, may be billed separately to tenants. However, this needs to be clearly described in the lease and distinguished from the utility charges for individual units. If a landlord decides to impose late fees or penalties related to utility payments, these are generally limited to the fees that the landlord incurs from the utility provider. If the landlord is charged a late fee, they can pass it on to the tenant, but they cannot impose additional penalties beyond what they owe. In summary, landlords can charge tenants for utilities only if the lease agreement explicitly states the tenant's responsibility for those utilities. The landlord must charge no more than the actual utility costs, and the method of allocating these charges must be reasonable and transparent. Charges for common area utilities need to be separately identified, and proper documentation or billing information should be provided to tenants. Understanding these details can help both landlords and tenants navigate their rental agreements more effectively and avoid potential disputes over utility charges.